over the weekend, the website, the Mary Sue, Twitter, and TMZ reported on this. It says, Mary Sue Twitter thread sparks debate on unlikable female leads. Now, the number one thing here, guys, is that there's no unified definition between the Mary Sue, the website, and the rest of the internet when it comes to what that actually is. So first, before we get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you what the Mary Sue defines as a Mary Sue. The website,
which
the Mary Sue,
is completely different from what everyone on Twitter is referring to. They're being obstinate.
This is what they say. First, let us remind us of what a Mary Sue actually is. Mary Sue is a pejorative term coined by female fanfic writers to describe a protagonist of any gender that was clearly the author inserting themselves into their favorite stories in order to achieve some sort of wish fulfillment. The Mary Sue is usually unique or powerful in a way not normal for the established universe, but more importantly, the other canon characters would become immediately enchanted or obsessed with the Mary Sue, and their journey would become the central plot of the story, regardless of whether or not it made sense to the actual lore. The problem is, that's not how 99% of the world defines a Mary Sue anymore. Yeah. That's not.
So I have another definition of it from MSN that said they're mislabeled as one-dimensional characters of misogyny. Okay, so they say how men online have defined female characters rather than just like the fact of the matter, which is it's colloquially talking about one-dimensional female leads who are overpowered, who are generally flawless.
Which is funny because I was watching, like I said, I watched X-Men and X-Men 2 this weekend. Haven't seen them in years. Oh my God. Like Storm, Rogue, fantastic parts of the X-Men early on, and you do not need to be perfect. They're flawed. They're human. Well, they're not human beings. They're mutants. But they're portrayed with flaws, and they're full-fledged characters with actual human emotions that do not get things right all the time. This is the definition according to Google. It says, originally in fan fiction, a type of female character who is depicted as unrealistically lacking in flaws or weakness.
That's so funny because the definition that I have is the complete opposite. Yeah. And I got it from when I was in college. And so I've told you guys already, but let me explain for the chat. So I got two definitions of it. So one is Mary Sue was a character in Gilligan's Island, and she was the love interest of Gilligan. And essentially all her personality was around like looking pretty, and she was just like very soft-spoken and feminine. And it in that point of view, it was typically meant just to be like a shell for whatever feminine, but
the male fantasy,
essentially, but lack of personality.
Which still makes her one-dimensional, just not in the same way that we're talking about.
But in college, I got a different definition, and it was more inspired from the Shakespeare character Ophelia, which is from Hamlet. That she was Hamlet's love interest, and essentially she was very distressed and never didn't have much of a contribution. She was kind of a placeholder for female. And as far as I've always understood, that's Mary Sue.
The PhD just jumped out, Dane.
Yeah.
Masters.
So here's the problem. The definition doesn't matter because what the general public, what the Mary Sue defines it as doesn't matter because that's not how the regular public sees it. And they can cry about it all they want. But the average person thinks of a Mary Sue as a person with no flaws. And I think the idea of them, or that they don't have to train to get good at something. And I think what's been transposed on that is the idea that they're unlikable because they never get humbled.
I think that this is the quibbling over what the term Mary Sue means is an obfuscation from the real debate, which is, does this trope hamper storytelling today in media? Yeah. And this debate originally erupted because an author or ghostwriting author named Joshua Lysick started a thread where he said, Ray, Galadriel, Captain Marvel, Bo Peep, why are modern female heroes so unlikable, and what does that mean for us professional writers it all starts with Mary Sue, and he defined it as a female protagonist who can overpower foes with ease, but without the backstory to explain her personality, values, agenda, or those abilities.
Sorry, real quick. I just got fact checked live by the chat. Apparently, the Gilligan's character is called Marianne. So I'm just a freaking idiot.
I probably should have fact checked you on that earlier,
Sweet.
but I didn't think to.
Love it.
Sorry.
Thank you, chat.
If a character never gets humbled, people won't identify with them.
So in the Star Wars universe, Rey is the Mary Sue.
Yes.
Luke Skywalker is not the Mary Sue just because you are philosophizing or psychoanalyzing George Lucas to have self-inserted himself into the story.
Let's talk about Morphin Clark. Let's talk about Galadriel in the show, not in the movies.
Not Morphin Clark, but Galadriel.
Galadriel in the show, not in the movies. So in that one, that is less so much the the fact that she can beat up three guys at once with the swords and everything. It's her personality. I think that we have to address,
the pushback on that is that Legolas did the same thing.
So and here's what I'm saying: when it happens to male characters, men and women are different. It is not seen as much of a flaw in male characters as it is a flaw in female characters, because it is more believable in male characters to be standoffish, rude, obstinate, and to be combative. That is less natural amongst females.
Which really is kind of insulting to the male audience, right? That you all as a group are more likely to be standoffish, stubborn, closed-minded.
But a gruff male hero who does what he has to do, regardless of what's being said. Like people always say, use House as a reference again. That is somebody who is extremely unlikable, gets stuff wrong all the time, but in the end is always right. So he fails a lot and then he succeeds. In these movies, how many times does Luke Skywalker fail before he succeeds? The male characters have to be humbled in a way that female characters aren't allowed to be humbled anymore, because if you humble a female character in that way, it's misogyny.
I'm trying to think over what you
Women just
said.
come with all the lessons in life already. Pre-packaged.
There are redeeming qualities to that gruff male lead that you're talking about. I think that the dissonance comes in when female characters are only supposed to be likable insofar as they imitate those male tropes rather than ways that their personality reflects how they are unique as females, which is like your potentiality for motherhood, really nurturing, being warm.
It's also a universal idea. Let me
being like good at communication, etc. Like there are so many strengths that could be highlighted that are being ignored in favor of what satisfies feminist screenwriters.
Also, let's reverse it. Okay, so we don't like it. It's less attractive when women act like male characters. One, I think it's because we understand that that's a writer making it that way, and the modern politic of it all comes out when you see that. But also, we don't like it when it's reversed. We talked the other day. Nobody likes the panicky male lead.
Right.
Nobody wants to watch a guy like stutter his way to accidentally succeeding, unless you're Shia LaBeouf in the first Transformers movie. That's like the only time it ever worked. Any other time, nobody actually finds it attractive to see a guy be completely ineffectual but still somehow kind of win.
Yeah, we're not being hypercritical of just female leads.
No.
We're talking about all of them and how both male and female leads are getting pigeonholed and misrepresented. And really, to sit in the armchair psychologist position for a second, it is insulting to the audience when they see their own shortcomings on screen. It is. Like when you point out to the male audience members how they have like maybe fallen short as men by putting them in the shoes of this panicky male lead, it's hurtful and disrespectful. When you point out to the female audience members that maybe they don't step into their, feminine roles the way that they should, it's also disruptive, it's insulting, and it's speaking down to them in both cases. It's like, I don't understand how we are being called misogynist for pointing out lazy writing that is disdain for the audience.
I think there's something inherently villainous about having no flaws.
Or not having to, like, when you see a villain who, okay, like in a movie, right? If the villain is the bad guy and he's super OP at the beginning of the movie, you don't really see how the villain got to be that way.
Yeah.
You don't see it until the end when they get beat, right? So a villain is inherently at the top of his game because he's putting his plan of attack into action, which means however long it took him to get to that power level isn't the point of that story that you're watching. What the point of the story is what he's putting into action. The hero, you need to see how they got there, especially if you're going to connect these over. You don't have an excuse. If you want to make that excuse over one movie that's an hour and 50 minutes long, you don't have time to show the backstory. I still think that's lazy writing. But when you're making 2.5-hour movies connected with 8 episodes of a TV show, connected with 19,000 episodes of an audio podcast like they're doing with Batman now, you don't have the right, or you don't have the excuse to say that you don't have the time to show their flaws or pretend as if what you're showing is that. And that's what they do a lot of times. And part of it's just being unlikable. Like, you can actually be flawed and be unlikable, but if you get humbled, I'm a lot more willing to watch you.
Because also in terms of story structure, a lot of story structure is based around the hero's journey, which we've talked about nonstop on this show, but at least I have. And if you don't have a moment of like rising tension, which a character that's infallible does not have, it's like, what are we even doing? It's like it's a video brag. Yeah. It's a 2-hour video brag. It's like, hey, well, just watch me crush stuff.
Well, I knew people that like they would watch shows and they hated it when like the main cast wouldn't be in conflict, and that's not really how storytelling works.
Yeah, the only reason that you would ever think someone doesn't have flaws is if you don't know them well enough. That means that they are not writing these characters to be known or truly liked by the audience, by not giving them flaws, by not representing them being in the wrong about anything.
The men are specifically written to be lesser than. In those cases, the worst examples are when the man is also a bumbling idiot and she has no flaws. Maybe she has no flaws and the guy's actually competent. You'll be like, okay, well, they're all just really good at their jobs, or they're very gifted.
In the case of Galadriel, when she is working in tandem with Halbrand, I think that there is a way you could push back on calling Galadriel by Morfydd Clark, not Cate Blanchett, a Mary Sue. Because she does, I mean, at one point rely on Halbrand to save her life. And then ultimately you find out
she trusted a guy
that
and
she
he
was
a bad
completely
guy.
Duped. And she, like, there was a flaw in her judgment. They also represented her being extremely narrow-minded. But
they see that as a benefit.
She had a one-track mind toward revenge for her brother rather than, really examining the person that she was trying to... partner with.
But I don't think they see that as a flaw of her. They see that as a negative trait of him. They see that as he duped her, not she was duped by him. Does that make sense? It's not that she was wrong. It's that he was evil.
It's two-sided though, and that's only if you have an audience member who's capable of seeing that.
So in the other thing here, the gender aspect of all of this is inherently political. So now, anytime we have to do this stuff, we're going to have to talk about it because it's written that way.
But we can browse over it, but I'd like to focus on particularly about the weak writing of it, because my issue with it is always, more than the political, it's there are tough women out there. And it's incredible how often and recurrently they fail to portray a tough woman.
Yeah.
They've just portrayed a woman pretending to be a guy. And they've never gotten the essence of like, when it's like, wow, that's a tough chick, they never get it. It's as if they talk about unconscious bias often. It's as if they have unconscious bias themselves. I was like, well, women aren't tough, so they just like pretend to be a guy. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a lot of...
It's way more complicated to write an actually strong female character because it's way more layered.
I wouldn't even say it's all that complicated. It's just that there's so much disharmony in the way the genders relate right now, that even like the people in the audience and the people in the writer's room share an ignorance of what women actually are, what their roles are, as well as men.
And they don't, the stories they're writing them into are ones that are inherently for men.
Right,
I mean,
and
that's where those are traditionally where male heroes go. Not
what
where
this
female heroes
ghostwriter
go.
pointed out is that Rey starts her story at the end of a hero's journey,
Yeah.
where she has completed her arc already at the start. And that's not interesting. Nobody wants to watch that. And then I saw this absolutely brain dead but super revealing tweet that showed these actresses who play Rey at Disney World or whatever. They're like dressed up to meet the kids, and these pictures of those actresses with children cosplaying as Rey, and they said, "I don't care what you think of Mary Sue's or unlikable female leads. This is what matters, not your opinion." And it's like, whoa, I think that we would have better role models for those little girls if you listen to what we're saying instead of drawing a line in the sand the second you get pushed back.
Also, there's always been female role models. It's just that now they're bad.
Yeah, like just because the children of today are settling for an inadequate one doesn't mean that that's where we should end.
I look back at my list of like 25 to 50 television shows that all starred women that all have strong female characters, and the number one thing that you find amongst all of them is depth of character. They have flaws. They're not just in their job. A lot of times they're really, really good at their job, but their flaws are in their personal life. So a big trope from both genders, like you're a rock star at work, but your personal life's a mess.
You know what I think they lack. The current ones also like a not only depth but intellect as well, because when I think of like a strong chick character, I immediately go to Catwoman. And the thing about her and her interaction with Batman is that he's like this genius ninja rich boy, but she always like kind of had like the mental advantage over him often. Like she'd make him more than anyone question his own moral code and kind of like the hypocrisy in what he does and what he stands for. And that, like, a strong woman makes you think that. Yeah. Like, that, because they just inherently see and feel the world differently.
It works. Like, I think it's like these characters are not like traditionally feminine characters. The reason why Black Widow works so well, or spy characters work so well, is because there's a long history of women being spies and using their feminine energy,
and not their brute force.
Not their brute force. I watched. I remember the show Nikita, the CW version of Nikita, not La Femme Nikita, starring Maggie Q. And there's some of that she's like very much like she can beat up dudes and they do the thing. That was the early days of that. But a lot of it is just infiltrating dinners in a dress that will get you into when you're a beautiful woman. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, she's a wreck and a mess in her personal life who can't commit to anyone because of the trauma of being raised basically as a super soldier for a government organization. There's depth there. There's character there.
Can you imagine a movie or TV show starring a male lead that uses his sex appeal to dupe people and get info? I mean, I've never seen that.
James Bond kind of does that. Sometimes.
Yeah.
He, in fact, in Tomorrow Never Dies, he has to get information on Jonathan Pryce's organization. He runs an evil newspaper organization. Imagine that. He has to dupe his. He gets information he dated his wife in college, or he had like a thing with the guy's wife in college, and he has to get information from her by basically being like, "Hi, I'm the guy."
He sleeps with in one of the Daniel Craig movies. He sleeps with a chick just to get information on in
the very beginning of Casino Royale. So
that's
an example.
That's a notable exception.
James Bond.
I won't lie, like it is jarring, and at the same time you do see him get into physical combat situations, so it's not mutually exclusive.
It's just never gonna feel
but
natural when women do it.
This one ridiculous tweet said, why don't people ever complain when these kind of characters are men?
Because men and women are
John
different.
Wick. Like, why does no one complain when male characters act like men? Big mystery there.
Well, also there's a lot of work done into John Wick to build the lore of the character. Not so much shown as in the very first movie when the Russian mob boss's son when they find out that he's the one who killed John Wick's dog and stole his car, they go into the whole long story where he talks about how he killed 3 people in a bar with a pencil, and that the only reason he was able to get out of the organization was by completing a task that everyone thought was impossible. Even if they don't show it, they go into the effort of explaining to you all of this stuff that he had previously accomplished and had to work to get to where he was. And it's different when it's a guy.
Yeah.
It just is.
And I just think this is a misconception of the grievance that we have as well. Like, the grievance is not that the woman is all powerful and has strength. It is that she is only that.
Yeah.
It is that she is infallible, perfect opinions,
and even
nothing
if there's
can stop her.
an individual example that we're wrong about calling them a Mary Sue, it's kind of come to the point where, like, we don't care.
It's the unlikable part that bothers
It's the
people
recurring theme that we're criticizing. And if they've made this trope so prolific in Hollywood that we are not able to distinguish between well-written and not well-written female characters, that's on them, not on us.
And also, it's the same reason why people like me don't like Superman. It's that his only flaw is that his fifis get hurt every once in a while. But essentially, Superman is like a narrative tool more than a person, because there's apparently nothing that in the universe that can stop except for like a rock.
Or even, Sarah Walker in Chuck is a character that, like, she's kind of the show Chuck. She's like a Mary Sue in the sense that she can beat up a bunch of dudes. She's a CIA officer. She's tiny, but she's like emotionally kind of a wreck. And you identify, like, maybe the flaws don't have to be in your professional life. Maybe the flaws have to be that you're willing to be vulnerable about other aspects of who you are. But the problem is they don't have the intelligence to write that stuff into the scripts, or it'll be written so badly that people won't identify with it anyways. Also, let's face it. If we're talking about Mary Sue and that they're this good at this and this, if you show me a scene where a woman, where John Wick takes 10 headshots and hits 10 people 10 out of 10 times, I will believe that every bit as much as I would believe if they have hot chick number 1 goes in and infiltrates a dude and, like, takes a dude out by pretending she wants to sleep with him and then gives him an injection to the neck. That won't feel off to me. That won't feel weird to me because I can buy that would happen every time. Now, buying that a woman would be able to beat a dude 3 times her size in hand-to-hand combat 10 times out of 10 times, I'm not going to believe that because it's not inherently normal.
Yeah, I've harped on this before, but it's so much more interesting to see women's capacity for evil in a realistic way that it is performed in the real world. Yeah. And that's why true crime is on the rise with female leads. Like, we want to see women and in, like, roles that they have a capacity to act monstrously. Like, we're not seeing that at all.
In fact, most of now that I'm looking at my list, most of the examples that I'm seeing here, it's not even that they're super flawed in their professional lives. It's that they're willing to show you that they're vulnerable in other aspects of their life. Sydney Bristow in Alias is extremely, her dad, her relationship with her family, all of this stuff leads to a character that's far more interesting than somebody that just happens to be good at being a spy for the government. Like, just do the work. Write the extra scene in there. If you have to get rid of something else, get rid of it. If you can write a story that's mediocre but with good character development, and people will be a lot more forgiving. Like put the time in especially if you're gonna put all these people in series, do that. But they won't do that. She-Hulk, they don't allow her to be vulnerable without being snarky.
Right.
You have to be snarky. That's the other thing. Kill the snark.
My God.
Unlikable is code for snark. They cannot do that because the internet has bred a culture of snark that they write now into the dialogue. But as we know, you don't talk to people in the real world the way you talk to people on Twitter. And everyone who's writing now writes a scene as if they're talking to people on Twitter.
By the way, someone in chat said that the girl in Bullet Train, like she was a good female villain.
Joey King.
Definitely.
And you know what's interesting?
I just saw it this weekend, guys. It's freaking really good.
She kind of had some of the girl boss problems. It's like, you don't know how frustrating it is to be a woman, to be put in these positions. But she came at it from a realistic perspective and angle. Yeah. And that's what, again, like, these people don't have.
Well, the realistic perspective for Joey King's character, I believe she was called the Prince in the movie.
Yeah.
Is like not being accepted for being female.
Yeah.
So she had to resort to
And the dumb brother.
all
who
of this
got-
deception to make up for it.
And she used her feminine, like looking like a little girl, to her
Yeah.
advantage.
Right.
That's believable. That people identify with that. A person could be like, I could see if this chick showed up next to a dead body and played like, I have no idea what happened. Like
yeah.
people, your inherent desire to like protect someone smaller and weaker than you would kick in, and you would at the very least question it. In fact, they made that a point where Tangerine is like, he's like, you are so good at, or no, is it the other guy?
Not feminist. Feminist would have clocked her in the face
is
like, they don't believe you.
Is it Tangerine? It's Tangerine.
It's been too long since I saw it. I don't remember.
And the other one, like, he's like, you are so good at this, because she's like lying to him, and he knows that she's lying.
Oh, yeah.
But
even after you realize that she's lying,
you're
you're
so
still
good at it.
invested. Yeah.
So it's just, you can do it, guys. Just write better. Like, and don't listen to the feminists, because they're just like, if the superpower is to have 40 cats and write snarky things on Twitter, then yes, that's fine. But otherwise, don't listen to them. So. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.